Welcome everyone. This is our first athletics department webinar. Through this project, we will give you basic notions of what happens in our body when we exercise. We will also present a specific topic every time. So after a brief introduction, we will have a lesson on the shoulder joint. So let's see the factors related to the effects of exercise. We summarize the factors in two big groups. The one is the physical activity related. The other one is the general condition related. So going back to the physical activity related, the effects of exercise. Let's see together what are the factors. So starting from the frequency. Frequency means how many times per week do we train? Then we have timing. The time of the day when you train matters. For example, if you train before or after a meal, early morning or late evening. For example, there's so many studies now that explain the differences between working out or doing physical activity before and after meals, or splitting the physical activity in 2 times, one before and one after the meal. They've seen that doing physical activity with low intensity after a meal, it's very good to burn fat. So whatever your income of energy from the food, from the last meal you have, you're gonna start burning out already those calories if you move soon after. Or if you train before a meal, the amount of calories that you're gonna input in your body with the meal after the exercise are gonna build back all the glucose that you've burned during the physical activity. So there's no way that you can put away those extra calories. So timing is very important. Then we have sequence. So with the sequence, you have to think about the different kind of physical activity you can do. So for example, if you do resistance training.
Infatti io l'altro sito non ha proprio senso, quindi non lo faccio proprio, perché è proprio sbagliato.
Guys, did you get in? Can you just unmute yourself and switch off?
Bella Sabè.
Thank you, guys. So with the sequence, for the sequence, you have to know what you're actually doing. So you need to know what aerobic means and what resistance training means. Knowing that, doing resistance training, so weightlifting, for example, before aerobics can make a big difference in your training, so in your effects. For example, the simple one, it's doing, if you need to lose weight, doing weights or body weight just before going for a run or a long walk or a bicycle ride, it's usually better because you burn more calories per time doing heavy weights than when you go for a run. Then we have the duration. For the duration, of course, it means, and also for the intensity, it means for each training session you do, how long is the training session and how intense you're gonna work out. These two are what in sports are called volume. So for the volume, you can decide if doing more exercises, like more repetition, more sets, or doing less repetition, less sets, but with heavier weights. It all depends on what is your goal and what kind of effects are you looking for. Then you have the modality or type. For example, we said before, aerobic or resistant training, or different kinds of modality, like yoga, HIIT classes, and functional training. Guys, can I ask you to mute yourself, please? Okay, perfect. And then we have the adherence. The adherence has also a psychological base, and it means for how long and how much can you stick to the program. The adherence is very important. It's probably the main personal goal that you have to look for, because for any other thing, a personal trainer, a coach could probably work out something for you, but for the adherence, it just comes from you. You have to stick to the program, and you have to seriously follow it as much as you can. So for the second group, the general condition related, these are more, let's say, they're very personal, so they depend on the person itself. For example, if we think about age, we know that with aging, our metabolism will slow down and we will face many phenomena, but one is called muscle loss that could lead to sarcopenia if we don't do anything about it. Muscle loss and strength loss is as high as 5 to 10% per decade after 30 years old. So when we turn 30 years old, every decade we tend to lose 5 to 10% of our strength and our muscle. So the best cure for this, and to prevent it or postpone it, more precisely, is doing exercise. Another thing that could help you to postpone this body decadence is nutrition. So we all know that our food is our fuel. So we can basically partly decide what fuel to give to our organism. So if we think about our body as an engine, we have this possibility, differently from, for example, a car. You have a diesel or a petrol. We can give to our body different macro elements, like proteins, like fats, like carbs. So whatever we put in our body will start using. So we can decide through nutrition if we want to give to our body more fat, more carbs, more protein. And with aging, as I said, it's very correlated with the nutrition. The more we grow old, the more we have to eat healthier. For example, many studies now show that older people, especially after 50, after 60, they should start eating a bit more proteins and less carbs for different reasons. One of the reasons is because their organism, so the digestion system, is not as good as it was before. So it doesn't collect all the proteins that we ingest. So we need to eat a bit more protein in respect of all the food that we eat. This doesn't mean that we have to eat a lot of meat. It just means that we have to eat clean, so less fat, less sugars, less salt, but better. Then we have sex. There are a few differences related to sex with physical performance, but all the studies so far show that the patterns of changes in substrate kinetics between trained men and women are similar. And exercise is made with moderate to high intensity. What this means, the patterns of changes in substrate kinetics, it means that men and women use and transform energy the same way. And if they train, do the same kind of training, everything that happens in the body is the same. So we switch to carbs, from carbs to fat, or from fat to carbs the same way. Then we have diseases. We know that many diseases can change our metabolism, for example, diabetes or any other metabolic conditions. The fitness condition is related to the person. So it means before you start training, you should know where you started. If you started from level 0, or if you're already like trained, or if you ever done something in the past 6 weeks to 12 weeks. And then there's all the environmental condition. So it's related to the environment we live in. So can we train? Are we facilitated to do so? For example, we have an example, I think Flavia's in. She's a swimmer. Does she have a swimming pool close to where she lives? Is the swimming pool too expensive? Is society facilitating this? So there are so many factors related to the environmental conditions. Okay, so the first bit that we did about the basic notions of exercising. Someone with the microphone on, please, if you can, just switch it off. I think it's Camilla. I'm gonna mute you, Camilla, sorry. It's not personal. Okay, so after this basic notions that we went through, we're gonna speak about something more specific, and that's the shoulder joint for today. So what do we know about the shoulder joint? Everybody goes to the gym and everybody knows everything about lats, about deltoids or shoulder, as many of you probably call it, pectorals, trapezius or whatever. But what happens inside the joint is very important, and basically everybody needs to know it, because most of the problems on the shoulder are related to what happens in this joint. So the first picture on the left that you see, and let me know if you can see my mouse moving, so I'll just show you. So this, I'll wait till someone tells me if they can see it. I'll just unmute Marco and see. Marco, can you see my mouse moving?
Nope.
No? Yes?
No.
Okay, it's fine then. I'll try to do it with
your hand.
With words. Okay, the first picture on your left, the one that says anterior right shoulder, there's only bones. So you can see the head of the humerus is the round bit, and that's basically your arm. So that's the head of your arm. The other bone that you see with the flat bit, it's called shoulder blade. So these two bones compose the shoulder joint. And for what we see, this is a bone to socket joint. So this kind of joint has a very high mobility, but since it has a very high mobility, it also has a low stability. And as we know, the muscle and the tendons that take part in a joint like this, needs to be strong and needs to be trained all the time. So the four muscles that compose the rotator cuff, that is, it's the actual, these are the actual muscles that hold the head of the humerus attached to the shoulder blade. Just imagine if you open your arm, your left arm, you close your right arm, you put your right arm in left hand, right hand, you put your closed right hand inside your left arm, and then you close your fingers around it. So this is what happens inside the joint. So the right hand stays inside the left hand, and you can just turn it around any way you want, and the fingers of the left hand will keep the right hand in position. So this is what happens to the joint, to the shoulder joint. The four muscles that we have here with the white tendon prevent any shoulder dislocation. These four muscles are involved in any overhead pulling and pushing function. So anytime you do push-ups, anytime you do pull-ups, anytime you take a bottle of water and you drink it, these muscles are very active. They're actually the pivot of the shoulder. So we recognize in the anterior part, the subscapularis, this muscle is involved in any intra-rotation of the arm. So imagine our elbow 90 degrees attached to the side of the body. Anything that we do turning inside in intra-rotation, that's our subscapularis that works. In the same position, anything that we do going out, so in extra rotation, it's the infraspinatus and the teres minor. Then we have the supraspinatus that helps mainly in the abduction of the arm. So anytime we lift our arm outwards, for example, when we do shoulder raise, lateral shoulder raise, that muscle holds the head of the humerus inside the socket. Okay, now let me get these, sorry guys, I'll get these two people in, admit and admit, perfect. Okay, now I want to show you some exercises, and I'm gonna talk on the videos so you can actually follow. Give me 1 second. So in this case, I'm doing a closed chain exercise. This means that my arm and my hand are attached to in this case, the wall, or it can be on the floor. This exercise is probably one of the best one you can do for your rotator cuff. So I'm leaning forward a little bit, just is the weight, because in this position, you can manage to keep your shoulder blade in position and the head of the humerus in the socket. And you're actually simulating most of the exercises that we usually do in the gym. So you can just have to turn your body. In this case, I'm pushing the opposite hand outwards. So my body is more aligned on the arm that is actually on the wall. And in this case, the head of the humerus is turning inside the socket. This is another exercise for the extra rotation. You usually should use not more than 2 kilos when you do this kind of exercise, because you don't want to activate the shoulder. This is the same thing. So keep your elbow very close to your body and try to extra rotate that head. This is an intra rotation. So you'll basically do the opposite work, bringing inwards the arm. Okay. I'm gonna give you 1 second. Thank you for that. I don't know who did that. It's not funny, but I'm gonna give you 1 second of voice if you have any question. Okay, I'm gonna unmute all. If you need to ask question, please try to speak one at a time.
Alex, I didn't see any video. Did you show some video?
Oh yeah, wait, you didn't see it?
No.
Okay, wait. 1 second. Okay.
Can you guys delete that stupid
Yeah, I don't
green?
know who did that, but it's not actually funny. There's people working here. Thank you. Okay, I'll try to show it again, Marco. Just let me know if you see it. Let me know if you see it.
Oh, no, yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So in this case, I'm going to present two different types of exercises. So we have a closed chain exercise and then an open chain exercise. So the closed chain exercise, it means that the extremity of my body are in contact with a wall or with the floor, or with something stable. And this represents more or less what we do in the gym. We do multi-articular exercises. For example, push-ups, or for example, push-ups, chest press, and anything multi-articular. So in this case, one arm stays on the wall while the body turns around it. So if you see the arm that stays on the wall is basically not moving. So it's the shoulder blade in this case that turns around the head of the humerus. Now I'm leaning forward just to add a bit of weight, and I'm doing the same thing. So this position allows you to keep all the blade in position, and it's better than the open chain exercises because if you have any impairment in the joint, this is more safe. So in this case, I'm trying to make a range of movement a bit bigger. So with the opposite arm, I'm going backwards. In this case, I'm doing an extra rotation a bit bigger too. Then we have the open chain exercises. This is the next rotation. Just remember that every time you do exercises for your rotator cuff, don't use more than a couple of kilos because you don't want the shoulder to get involved. You don't want the deltoid to get involved. This is another exercise you can do. Of course, if at home you have an elastic, you can use that. It's even probably better because you can decide where to stop, and the weight is always like continuous. This is the intra-rotation. So I'm going to show you again the intra-rotation. It's the opposite movement. And we work on the
Si è rovinato.
in this case.
Vabbè,
Okay.
bello. Però ti sta bene, certo è di più secco, non ti sa bottone.
Poi Camilla, zitta, per cortesia. Please, Cami.
Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. I'm gonna share my presentation. Perfect. Okay. So we more or less understood what the rotator cuff is and what's its job and how important it is. And of course, if you have more questions at the end of the presentation, just ask. And if you think about questions at the end of the webinar, don't worry, just send us an email and we'll just help you out. So let's see now which are the major muscles involved in the shoulder joint. These are probably what we think about when we think about the shoulder joint and how can we work out in the gym. So these are the muscles that we actually see, the superficial muscles. So first of all, of course, is the pectoralis major. The pectoralis major is, if you look at the picture, the below one is the major muscle on the anterior side of our chest, and is involved in any adduction of the arm. So any kind of movement that you do pushing away from your body. So for example, if you're doing a chest press or if you're doing push-ups, you're actually using your chest. Then we have the deltoid. The deltoid is what most people call shoulder, and it's involved in any abduction or overhead exercise. So anytime you push something over your head, or if you're doing a handstand, for example, you're using your deltoid and partially the trapezius and other muscles, of course. Or abduction, it's anytime you elevate your arm outwards, for example, when you do a shoulder raise. Then we have the trapezius. The trapezius just runs at the back of your spine from the head down to the trunk. And it's divided in 3 parts. Each part has a different task. So we have a descendant part. It's the one that goes from the back of your head down to the, more or less, to the shoulder blades. And it's involved in mainly in extending your head. Then we have the transverse part, that is the one that goes around the shoulder blades, and they work on the shoulder blades to keep them in position and bring them to the center of the back. And then we have the ascendant part that basically elevate and extend the trunk, the upper part of the trunk, and they are attached to the shoulder blade at the bottom. So anytime you try to keep your shoulder blade in position, they are activated. And then we have the latissimus dorsi. It's involved in any adduction of the arm. And so every time we pull something towards us, or for example, when we do a pull-up or chin-up. So we saw the major muscles involved in the shoulder joint. And one thing I want to remind you, if you are trying to work on your posture, you always have to remember that the latissimus dorsi, it's good to work out on that muscle if you want to work out on a posture, but we always have to remember that a very developed lats, what we call lats, could bring forward your shoulder even more, because the insertion of the muscle, it's actually on the front side of the humerus. So let's see together the exercises we can do to work on our major muscles at home. So most of us at home probably don't have weights, so it's not easy to work out. So let's see together now a couple exercises that we can do. I'm gonna ask again Marco or anyone if they can see the video.
Yeah.
Okay, Marco is here, perfect. Okay, so I started the video with a few warm-up exercises. So any rotation, these are called circumductions. So front and backwards. You can do it with bent arms, so bent elbows, touching your shoulders, or you can do them with your arms straight out. So same thing. You can also increase the range of movement. This other exercise is the extension of the arm. So you can do these upwards, front, and lateral. And I'm gonna stop you for a second. When you do these kind of exercises and you have pain, especially here in the extension above the head of the arm, you can probably have problems on the rotator cuff. And if you do, you probably have to seek help from an expert. And in most cases, actually like 80% of the time, it's the supraspinatus muscle of the rotator cuff. Is tendon, usually it's more inflamed. So you have pain usually doing this kind of exercises, lifting your arm. Okay, let's go forward. Let's go see, first we're gonna go through some exercises for the pectoralis. So in this case, we're gonna do push-ups. I'm standing on my knees. So this is the basic push-ups you can do to just get a bit of weight out of the way. Or you can use like a table, anything higher than the floor. So your arms and your hands are higher than the floor. In this case, this is a standard push-up. I'm gonna stop you. Every time you do push-ups, you always have to remember that your shoulder blade has to be in position. This because you can work better on your chest, but mainly is because you want to avoid injuries. So shoulder blade in position, activating the trapezius that we talked before and the other muscle of the back. Chest out, keep your shoulder in the socket. So that means that since the shoulder joint is called bone into socket joint, you have to keep that head of the humerus inside the shoulder blade. So always remember that. One other thing, if you see the arm is straight below the joint. So you always have to remember every time you do any exercise, the shoulder and the elbow and the wrist, they always have to be on the same line, so on the same direction. Okay, to add a bit of weight, we can just elevate our feet using a fit ball, using a table, using a chair, even a sofa if you have a sofa at home. In this case, we're gonna elevate the feet. Okay, here we're using books, or you can use any other thing to just elevate both arms, or just one arm in this case, to create a range of movement that it's bigger than usual. So you're gonna stretch out, you're gonna stretch out the chest even more. If you see the elbows, the left elbow is a bit higher than the right elbow. So you're gonna stretch out your chest even more. And that is good to increase strength and to increase mass. Then, okay, the 3-point, it's a good exercise. In this case, I elevate one foot. You can elevate first the right and then the left, maybe do 5 and 5 if you can. In this case, you're working on your chest and your triceps, of course, but you're also working on your equilibrium. So you had difficulty to the exercise. Of course, this is a more expert kind of push-ups. So if you're just starting now, don't start with this one. Okay, this is a reverse push-ups. In this case, you're still working on your chest, but you're involving the shoulders even more. This is a mix, so one arm is reversed, the other one is in a normal position. I suggest these kind of exercises, do these kind of exercises only if you already have a basic strength on the upper body, because they're quite difficult. Okay, to work better on your triceps, this is a diamond push-up. So if you see here, I'm just gonna stop it 1 second. The hands are very close to each other and you're pushing your elbows out just to increase a bit the work of the triceps and a bit the shoulder. It's involved a bit more. After this one, we're gonna go to the triceps push-ups. So in this case, the hands are basically under the shoulder. So with the normal push-ups, usually we are a bit wider. But in this case, we're just below the shoulder. And we try to keep our elbows as close as we can to the body in order to work better with our triceps. Okay, this is a side-to-side push-ups. These are one of the toughest one. So you go up and down with only one arm at a time, or in this case, you slide from one side to the other. These are quite difficult. And remember that every time you do, this is important for any kind of push-ups. When you do any kind of push-ups, you always have to remember to keep your shoulder blades in and to keep your core active. So keep your abs active all the time. Don't lose your hips. Okay, in this case, this is the Tibetan push-ups. This is, if you're already are quite good at doing push-ups and you need more weight, this is probably one of the best one that you can do. You're basically working on the entire shoulder. If you just want to start with these, you can do half Tibetan push-ups, like the one I'm doing now. So you just go down, and once you touch the floor, you just get up using your legs. Okay. Basically, you just have to imagine that you want to get through, it's like going through something, so you have to go under it and get out on the other side. Okay, for any kind of exercise, I'm gonna perform shoulder raise, lateral and frontal. This is the position you have to remember. It's a neutral position. So bend your knees, activate your core. So keep your core always, your abs always tight, and shoulder blades in, and keep your shoulder in the socket. Elbows are a bit bent, and just imagine that you're pouring a bottle of water, like I'm doing now. If you see, in this case, if you see the bottle looks like that the water is coming out. So just keep the bottle in that position. Same thing with the frontal shoulder raise. I suggest to always do one arm at a time like this, because most of the time if you have heavy weights and you lift both arms up, you basically fall forward. Okay, for the back flies, I'm going to show you also from the side. Keep your shoulder blades in position all the time. The head of the humerus inside the socket, your back straight, bend your knees, and open your arms. Okay, in this case, we're doing a shoulder press. The position is always the same. Bend knees, abs activated, shoulder blade in, the shoulders in the socket, and we go down all the way, bending our elbows. In this case, you can probably use heavier weights. And it's probably one of the best exercises for the shoulder. You can also work one arm at a time. In this case, especially if you have heavy weights, you're gonna work a lot on your core. So it's actually good if you're already like an advanced trained person. Okay, for the trapezius, this is an exercise that you can do for activation, but it's actually really good also as an exercise, an actual exercise. You just have to touch the opposite shoulder, try to squeeze your trapezius as much as you can. If you try this exercise, just try it now while you're in front of the computer. And then at the end, you tell me what you feel. Then we have handstand. With the handstand, you can just stand like this, or you can go up and down. And you're gonna work on your trapezius, and you're gonna work on shoulders and triceps. Okay, chin pulls. When you do the chin pulls, in this case, I'm using a table just to have a bit more weight and showing you that the weight has to be, I'm gonna show it to you again, just to show you that the weight has to be very close to the body when you lift it, and your elbows have to go very up, shoulder blade in position, and just slide the weight to the body. I'm gonna watch it from the front. So you see the elbows going up and the hands touching the chin. This exercise is actually really good to work on shoulders and a bit on your biceps. Okay, going to the lats, a pull over. It's a good exercise that you can do just to finish a session and work on your lats and work on your chest too. You probably need at least a couple of bottles to just give a bit of weight to this exercise. Then we have the low row. Probably most of us already know this exercise if we go to the gym. You always have to remember to keep your back straight, shoulder blade in position, and go down all the way. You just don't want to, let me go back 1 second. You don't want to go too much towards the shoulder, but you want to go with the hand that is working towards the hip, because you want to activate more the lats and less the biceps. Okay, this exercise, okay, I'm gonna stop you 1 second. You're gonna lay down on the floor, your hands in front of you. Try to push down with your hands on the floor as much as you can. And while you push down, bring the hands towards you. So you're gonna create resistance by pushing down with your hands on the floor. But while you pull back, it doesn't look like it, but try it. It's actually really hard on your lats. If you have like a wooden floor, most of the time when you do this, most of the time with the wooden floor, if you put your hands there and pull, most of the time you're gonna slide forward, and that's okay too. Okay.